fans, welcome back to Room 237 as I continue my marathon of Italian horror and Giallo films. And just real quick, I always thought one of the golden rules of Giallo, and what makes a film a Giallo, is it has to be Italian. If not Italian, at least an Italian co-production. I mean, that's one of the... Should have done this first. That's one of the very first things in the intro in Troy Howarth's Giallo Encyclopedia, that it has to be Italian. And that's why a lot of films outside of Italy with no co-production with Italy is considered Giallo inspired or themed or homage or tribute, except for Spain. Spain seemed to have had a Giallo movement as well, especially in the 70s, around the same time as the Giallo boom in Italy. And I'm not talking films like Pieces, because Pieces is a slasher anyway. No, it's not a Giallo, don't say it is. But there's a number of Spanish Giallos that aren't called inspired or themed, they're actually called Giallos. And getting this far into the Giallo marathon, I'm starting to uncover some of those. And this is the first one I'm doing, and it's 1978's Trauma, which, yes, I finally picked up volume 1 and 2 of Vinegar Syndrome's Forgotten Gialli, which also The Killer is One of 13 is another Spanish one. I don't remember if Police Blundering in the Dark is or not. I already have a review for My Dear Killer, but the other 5 I have not seen, so look out for those. Yeah, I really would have rather had the box sets where the 3 films are individual, but I'm perfectly fine with these standard issues. I'm glad to have finally picked this up. Volume 3 is still available in a box set, so hopefully I'll be able to pick that up soon. But Trauma, the first fully Spanish Giallo I've seen, and like I said, came out in 1978, which was the same year Red Rings of Fear came out, which one of its alternate titles is Trauma. Also, Argento's 93 Giallo is called Trauma, so popular title. But I think the title works well with this film because this owes a lot to Hitchcock's Psycho. There's a lot you could either say is inspired by or directly lifted straight from Psycho. Now, it was directed by a well-known exploitation director, which actually, I also like its original title, which was Violación Fatale, which I'm guessing means like fatal violation. Excuse me. Leon Klimovsky was the director, and he's really known for, was it Vampire's Last Orgy? Actually, it's, the one it mentions on the back is, The Vampire's Last Orgy, but also, I think it was Dracula's Great Love. Oh, no, that's The Killer is One of 13, is the director of that one. And it stars, I'm going to butcher all these names, Agatha Liss, Heinrich, of course, not all the names are showing up, I have to click on them, Heinrich Starenberg, who is also the executive producer, or a executive producer, I have to get back to the cast now. Ricardo Marino, Isabel Pisano, who is also in Last House on the Beach, which is a Last House ripoff, which I would like to see. Antonio... God, this tablet's slow. Antonio Mayans, who... none of his films seem familiar, at least worth pointing out as far as Giallo and horror. But also, God, this tablet is so slow. Sandra Alberti, Irene Foster, Aparicio Rivero, and Tony Garcia Jr. Writers, written by Juan Jose Porto, Carlos Puerto, and came out in 1978. The thing about these Forgotten Gialli films is they are in their original language, so they're not dubbed, they are subtitled, which is perfectly fine. I've seen a bunch of movies foreign with subtitles. It doesn't bother me. But usually when I do reviews, I like to have like a Wikipedia plot line in front of me just to kind of help my memory as I'm going along. But so when there's no Wikipedia page for the film itself, really you gotta make sure you gotta pay double attention. But I'm glad this was the first one I watched because this is a very quaint film. It's got a very limited location, a very limited cast, very limited story. It plays out more like a slasher at times. It all pretty much takes place at this bed and breakfast or boarding house, countryside inn, whatever you want to call it. I mean, I actually thought about this while I was watching it. If movies like All Colors of the Dark, Strange Vice of Miss Ward, or Deep Red, if Giallo was Hitchcock, if those movies were like Vertigo, Rear Window, or North by Northwest, just in scope and scale, Trauma is like Rope. It's a very quaint film. Which, after watching this many Giallo, I mean, this is going to be my 54th Giallo review. Which, side note, I will still put this, even though it's Spanish, in the Giallo playlist. But I might start a separate one for just Spanish Giallos. Because I plan on getting more of those as well. Lost my train of thought, but... So, yeah, it's a lot like Rope because it all takes place in this one area, and, that's what I was going to say. So, after watching this many Giallos where even some of the best ones can be very convoluted, have a lot going on with a lot of different characters, a lot of different plot points that come in that have to get resolved, this one was kind of a vacation. I mean... It's all this guy, Daniel, played by, Heinrich Stromberg. He's a writer who shows up at this countryside bed and breakfast, or a boarding house, which is lived in by Veronica, played by Adiga Lees, if I pronounce that correctly. And basically it's just a few days of those two together in this house. And over the course of a couple days, a couple other different couples come in and they get killed by the black-gloved, straight-razored killer. There's more that goes into it, but that's basically the skeletal outline of this film. And it's very limited on motive. Is very limited on pretty much everything, but it was kind of nice to watch something this easy. I mean, Veronica and Daniel are only two constant characters throughout the film. The only other one is this young boy who I don't think had a name in the film. I think he was just young boy. Tony Garcia Jr., who shows up here and there throughout the film. So everyone that shows up are victims, essentially. Oh, and eventually Daniel's wife, but she comes in way, way later. And so I really like it. It's limited location, which that's also why it kind of makes it feel like a slasher, because slashers are more the limited, unique, relatable, or identifiable location. In this case, a boarding house or a bed and breakfast, where everyone shows up to get killed, essentially. But, so Daniel shows up hoping to get some sort of vacation, time away so he can work on his writing project. Veronica wants to be alone, but she's very intrigued by Daniel. And the whole opening of the film really seems to be those two clicking very well. Like, he wants to get away, she wants to be alone, but there's an attraction there. Especially when she finds out he's a writer, and she wants him to be very comfortable. Almost like she's falling in love with him. But the catch to that is that her husband is living upstairs, where, their room is upstairs. Where there's several scenes where she goes up, and this isn't really a spoiler because it's very obvious, but there's this tall leather chair that's back to, and she's talking to it. She's facing the camera, the chair, and talking to it and not getting a reply back. Like, you're always smoking all the time. You never eat the meals I give you. Talking to her husband, but there's no reply. So, of course, the twist is going to be, is it going to be a corpse? Is it going to be nothing? That's pretty much the Psycho angle of it. Eventually, this young mountain climbing couple show up for shelter from the storm, and of course they're more of a nuisance. Veronica's not happy about them at all. They're always pushing, hey, can you cook us this? Hey, can you get us wine? Hey, can you do this for us? And then eventually, as they're having sex, they get killed. I actually don't remember if it's them or if it's like the yuppie couple, which is just a married businessman and a prostitute. Which couple it is, but the killer, we see through POV, the killer comes in, sees they're having sex, and then backs away. So, it lets them finish. It's a very, maybe this... if it was a slasher film, I would have said that's the most Canadian thing I've ever seen, because a lot of slasher films were filmed in Canada. But, and the kills... Okay, so we get the two couples. So there's really 4 deaths that I can think of. And they're all done with a straight razor. And the aftermath effects look decent. Look pretty good. But, as the killings are happening, it looks like it's barely touching the actor. Like, you can almost tell there's a pump underneath. Normally, I would have said that's bad. But where this is such a quaint, low-key film, I think that helps add to its charm. And of the 4 deaths, I would say 2 of them are kind of forgettable. One is very bloody, and it's the girlfriend of the first couple, where, she gets slashed here, and here, and here, and I think here. She gets slashed everywhere. And then the other guy, Victor, like the rich guy with the prostitute, he gets killed in his car, but that's really one of the only shots that's kind of inventive, which is he goes out to his car to get cigarettes, and he kind of gets jumped, so it's like he's laying in the back seat, and the camera comes back, kind of stopping at his head, where we see the hand with the razors, almost like it's pushing the camera. So we have one kill that's like technically appealing, and then one that's just a good bloody death. But the aftermath gore effects are well done. And I guess the major thing about this film is it Veronica or is it Daniel? And this movie is very hint heavy at both. Of course, it sets Veronica up for having these issues. We get the idea that she has had an abusive husband and is now talking to nothing, like he's still there. But we also get that Daniel has a wife, and he just up and left. It even shows his wife back home on the phone saying, no note, no phone call, I have no idea where he is. I don't even know if he's still alive. But then she comes in the film like she just found him. And it was so random, I thought Daniel went out and got a prostitute. I didn't put together it was his wife at first. Also, it's very heavy with, going back and forth between Veronica and Daniel. Because when we first see Daniel, when he's driving to the house, he's wearing black gloves. And then finally, when he retires to his room, he lays on his bed and the camera zooms in on him taking the black gloves off. Also, when the guy's killed in his car, who's looking for cigarettes, it shows Daniel in his room, and right in front of the camera, there's a pack of cigarettes and he's smoking. But also, it shows there's scenes where after the first couple is killed, he's out in a boat on the lake, and he notices a sheet at the bottom. And so he uses an oar to pick up the sheet. He's kind of looking at it. Also, I thought this might be a red herring, and I thought this was kind of strange. When it shows the killer's legs, like a waist down shot, the legs look kind of small, and the shoes are like classic Chuck Taylors. I was thinking, are they trying to make that young boy a red herring? Possibly the killer? Because he does show up a couple times. The first time he shows up, it might show he has some sort of peeping Tom tendencies. Like, he knows this woman lives there alone. He even told the guy when he stopped for directions at the very beginning, oh, it's this woman that lives by herself. Which is why, during their first conversation, Daniel and Veronica, when she mentions her husband and how he loves chess, Daniel keeps pushing, ask her husband if he wants to play a game of chess, and he keeps pushing it. I think it's because he knows and knew ahead of time that she lived here alone. And also, Veronica spends a lot of time up in her room just kind of talking to nothing again. So it really does a good job at making both parties, going back and forth on which one looks innocent and which one looks guilty. Also, in many scenes with the killer, when we get, when we can actually see the naked arm between the jacket and the glove, it's a very hairy, manly arm, which Giallo is known to use use actors or stunt actors that are noticeably different than the killer to throw the audience off. But with that, there's really not much to talk about because there's not really a story. It's a writer is there for silence. This woman lives alone, wants to be alone. You can tell she's tormented and traumatized, but there is an attraction there, and they both seem to make each other happy, and more people keep showing up, and they get killed off. Also, when the dark-haired prostitute gets killed, I'll actually say that was a technically interesting scene, too, because we get this POV chase, very, I was going to say slasher inspired, but it came out in 78. The kill is a POV chasing her, and it's shaky, and it's running towards her. The music's kind of loud and bombastic. Which, some of the music, like the opening credits, is fine, but I don't remember a lot of music throughout at all. But so yeah, there's not really a whole lot to say because there is no story, kind of. But again, we're such a low-key, quaint film. The lack of story, I thought the acting was fine. Some of it's over the top, and the very unconvincing slashings with the razor. I think that adds to charm rather than so bad it's good or cheesiness. Kind of like Sleepaway Camp. I think this movie has charm like Sleepaway Camp. And I actually really enjoyed it. If you're a Giallo fan, definitely check it out so you can say you've seen it once. If you're the kind of person that can't get behind low budget or, sees flaws as flaws and doesn't see charm in anything, then you're not going to like it. If you think every film is going to be like The Godfather, or if you think every Giallo is going to be as good as Deep Red or Torso, you're going to be disappointed. If you're a person that can't find good in the cheesiness, like I know I've talked to some people who have said, well, the camera work in this one shot wasn't so good, so this movie's garbage. I couldn't take it seriously. Jesus Christ. But I actually enjoyed this Giallo, so with that, I'm going to get into spoilers, So real quick with spoilers, because there isn't much to say. Whether you thought it was Daniel or Veronica, you're kind of right. Veronica is a killer because we get a flashback to a night of a sexual assault with her husband. And she kicked him off of her. And he hit his head on the bedpost, got pissed, went to attack her, and she slashed his throat. So she is a killer, but it was in self-defense, you can argue. And now that's why she talks to this chair. She's so traumatized, she takes on the personality of her husband. And we're supposed to believe she did these killings for whatever reason. And no, there is no dead body in that chair. She's talking to nobody. Sometimes she'll put on her husband's jacket and sit in the chair and kind of talk as him, but we don't see that until the end. Mostly it's her talking to the empty chair. And yeah, the movie doesn't do a good job at making it look like someone could be there, or even putting some sort of voice, like, and then finding out it's in her head. It's very obvious there's no one in the chair. Although there is one interesting scene where she has the razor and shaving cream. So it's like, was she shaving herself? Like going back and forth between sitting and standing? Or was she just going like this to nothing? There was nothing in the chair. So it wasn't full-on Hitchcock Psycho. And we don't get the exposition at the end of how she was traumatized and her brain split. But the murders were pinned on her. The final twist is Daniel and his wife are driving away. And his wife kind of starts to talk about, she's so traumatized. I guess that's why she killed all those people, but at least now it's over. And then Daniel starts to fumble in his jacket, and she asks if he's looking for cigarettes, and she reaches in his pocket and pulls out the straight razor. And he kind of gives her a smirk. Daniel was the killer of the people at the inn. Which, there are a couple things that don't make sense. Like, he does hide the victims' cars. So, the whole they left story can come into play. But there's a part where he finds a car and seems surprised, even though he did it. I'm guessing that was just there as a misdirection, but, and I know some people will call it bad writing, because they have the highest fucking standards on the planet. I can forgive a few little flubs, especially if it's a mystery like this, and it's kind of got to help itself along. Especially if it's a low budget aimless movie like this, because it does feel aimless as well. But we don't get any motive as to why Daniel killed. I don't know if it was left ambiguous. Because, I mean, he was there for a getaway, and these couples were having sex loudly. It does show they're loud and obnoxious. And it does show him trying to write with noise in the background. But if that was the case, why would he continue to let them have sex, let them finish, and then kill them later? Why not get to them when they're fully vulnerable? Or is it he is a killer and he goes on these unannounced getaways to get his killer urges out? Because there does seem to be some sort of repressed sexuality or something there. Even his relationship with the young boy almost kind of makes it seem like he has some repressed homosexuality. I don't want to say, anything towards kids, but it seems like there's something he's battling within himself that the movie just doesn't address. So there's no clear motive as to why Daniel's picking these people off, whether it's because he wants peace and quiet, because he's a serial killer and that's what he does. It doesn't really say. I guess it's ambiguous and whatever you want. But, so yeah, other than that, there's not a whole lot else to say about Trauma. Although the ending is kind of weird, because as he's driving the young boy standing on the side of the road, they share a wave. He's wearing the black gloves again. A wave and a smirk, and then we freeze frame on the boy smiling as he's waving. Now, of course, as I said before, it implies some sort of peeping Tom tendencies, because Daniel catches him watching the house. And then during their second interaction, the boy asks why he let him go and didn't get him in trouble. He says because men look out for each other. I guess implying you do what you want, I'm going to do what I want. I won't say anything if you don't say anything. And I guess that smirk was to kind of show that this kid potentially saw Daniel doing stuff he shouldn't have been doing. But since Daniel didn't rat on him for trying to watch whatever it was he was trying to see, the boy's not going to say anything about Daniel. But yeah, it was kind of nice to watch a Giallo that was very low-key, especially in story. There's no convoluted inheritance or insurance scam to go over. There's not a whole sprawling list of characters. There's not one character that gets killed that serves the plot. As in, has to be killed because they have something to say about the killer, or they're trying to look into the deaths. They're all just there to die. They're there to fuck and die, basically. Which does kind of give it more of a slasher vibe, especially with the kind of setting and everything. But, so yeah, after watching this many Giallos, it was nice to watch one that is this, dare I say, simplified. And it was nice to see a Spanish touch. Because the music and the shooting style was very different. Each country has their own approach to film and how they tackle different formulas and stories. So yeah, I will add this to the overall Giallo playlist. I might take the word Italian out. And then for movies like Trauma, in the parentheses, which people love in the comments, even though they don't need parentheses for anything, just use a comma. Parentheses are not needed, especially as much as people use them. In the parentheses of the year on the title, I'll put Spain or Italy, Spain on the more specific ones like Trauma. And I'll also start a Spanish Giallo playlist. But yeah, I thought I had a lot of charm. I enjoyed the low-key quaintness. I said that a lot throughout this review, but I did enjoy it. It was kind of nice after a while to see one this low-key. But yeah, that is 1978's Trauma, and I will be tackling the other 5 on these Forgotten Jolly sets. I'm very excited to get into those. Next I might either go in order. I really do want to see Killer as one of 13, but I might just do Police Are Blundering in the Dark next. But so look out for the rest of those and other Italian horror and Giallo films. Thank you for watching.